name's Julie, and this is Sherry, and I am the leader of the Lancaster group of Eating Disorders Anonymous. And I'm here to chat with you about the 12 steps of EDA, and I have the EDA big book right here in front of me, which actually isn't that big, it's kind of small, but there's a lot in it. And we're gonna start with the first step. There are 12 steps, and steps 1 through 4 are typically the foundational steps, and then 5 to 10 are the action steps, like where you really get some sweat going.
Okay.
And then 11 and 12 are sort of the recovery, living and recovery steps and sponsorships. So the first step is we admitted we were powerless over our eating disorders, that our lives had become unmanageable. We finally had to admit that what we were doing wasn't working. And so I find step 1 happening a lot. And it's kind of like that with all the steps. They kind of don't happen just once in isolation, they happen together. And I was chatting with a couple of people over the weekend and today, and going through this idea of an eating disorder log and talking about a history of the eating disorder, when the thoughts and behaviors started, the different manifestations and progression, and anything that seemed to tie into the eating disorder, such as what led me to stop or get worse. And this just really allowed me on like a historical timeline standpoint to look at like, okay, when did it start? And then like, when did things start to go south? And how did all of that sort of put together? And like, look at what was happening in America, look at what was happening in my family, look at what was happening. And so every time that I've done this, and like I did this a couple times this weekend, something different has come out of it, like a different aha.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting to see it on paper, you know, and then take it away.
Yeah. And I want to clarify real quick too, when you say, the way that this book is worded sometimes throws me off a little bit, because it's written from like that first person perspective. So step 1, if you're following along, you know, it's having to admit. The first step is just admitting that, not just that you have a problem, not just that there is an eating disorder, but that you're powerless to it. And that it has reached the point where it's unmanageable, and that it's something that is beyond you, you know, and beyond a simple fix or, you know, all of the things that we're marketed to. But kind of clarifying, you know, I think it's interesting to hear it from people that they wrote this, that we did this, and this is what helped. But a lot of times for myself, I have to reframe it that, and apply it to myself, instead of just reading it as a story. Like, oh, well, that's good, that worked for them, I'll just, you know, it's like, no, you have to do it. You have to admit.
So you change the we to an I.
A lot of times.
I think that works for me.
Yeah.
Well, I like that. And you shared something today that, you know, it's an I, like I admitted, however, it's the we that gets the people recovered. Like, so, you know, I admitted I was powerless over my eating disorder, that my life had become unmanageable. I finally had to admit that what I was doing wasn't working. And in that admission of self, I was then able to connect with others. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I admitted, and then I was able to connect with others to help me. Because part of the eating disorder was, me thinking I was powerful over it. And so as soon as I admitted that I was powerless, you know, it had
Absolutely.
to connect.
You have to admit that you're powerless before you can accept help. Why are you going to accept help for something that you have, that you got? Yeah.
Well, and that was part of the problem, you know, because I thought I had the power over it, and I didn't. I was powerless to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you start, you know, you go down that path of you're feeling guilty that you don't have the control, or you start to blame yourself, when really the answer isn't within yourself. This is something that does need to be an external force partnered with self-realization.
Well, and as I look at my eating disorder log and think back to what I wrote, you know, and when the thoughts and behaviors started, the different manifestations and progression, all of that logging started out very connected to my life, to people. And then as the eating disorder went along, it went further and further away. Like, I separated from roommates, I separated from family, I separated from relationships. So it's interesting how
if you create that, you do that homework and do the eating disorder log, it becomes very transparent. Because
Yeah.
when you're living it day in and day out, as with anything, you get normalized to it. Like you start to think, you know, oh, it's not so bad, or oh, maybe it's a little bit worse today. Oh, it's a little bit worse, but I can get back on track.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how far you've fallen until maybe you take account of everything and see how it's permeated more and more areas of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, just to understand that the obsession and the cycle can't be broken unless a fundamental change occurs. And so the purpose of working these steps is the fundamental change. And as I said, you know, moving from step 1 through 4 into 5, it is a big step, and it's a fundamental change. It's something that's going to shift the way that the normal business operating happens into something that's very different.
So a question for you, you've gone through the steps a couple times, and do you, I mean, you've gone through the steps even though, I guess my question is, how long do you stay on a step? You're never gonna perfect a step. That's not what this is about, right? So like, how long do you stay there until, you know, if I'm saying like, oh, I don't know if like I'm accepting enough help, or if I'm really relinquishing control, like this first step, is very difficult to let go and to admit that you're powerless. I don't think I'm there.
Right.
But we've also been talking about the next steps. Like we've we continue to go on and bring up new areas. So I guess for you guys, if you're starting with step 1, how do you know? I mean,
yeah, you know, there's a lot of theories on it. So in the book, they ask you to sort of keep moving and don't get stuck, just because of, I'll speak for me, I don't know if this is true for anybody else, but I tend to perseverate over one thing and have to perfect it, like you said, and that's not the goal. The goal is balance, not perfection. And so ultimately the goal is to go through steps 1 through 12 in any one decision that we make.
Okay.
So the goal is to have, you know, no matter where you are, no matter what it is, food related, not related, is to have 12 steps like in your body, so that it's almost like a rinse, lather, repeat kind of a thing. And so while one can spend years on step 1 without putting any action behind it, it almost needs to, you know, you almost want to spend time on each step and then just keep going back. So to answer your question a little bit more directly, each time I work the steps, it's a very different step 1.
Yeah.
And so if step 1 happens on a daily basis, I admit I'm powerless over my eating disorder and that my life had become unmanageable, it almost, it makes it more part of that normal daily life versus the eating disorder being part of the normal daily life, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's what it has to be. You know, we talk that this is just always going to be a part of life, and it is a lot of work, and it is a lot of forcing ourselves to think through these things until it starts to become a little more automatic.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how that first step is, it's foundational. And so, but again, I don't think that any one of the steps is more important than the others. I think that they're all equally important. It's just taking them over and over again. And I'll say that step 4 is a pretty intense moral inventory step. Step 10 is another sort of moral inventory that isn't as intense. And so it's just interesting to look at them. I mean, the whole is the goal, right? But I think it's interesting to look at them all 12 steps, and then to zero in. And on Eating Disorders Anonymous, they have specific step study meetings. Like out of the 7 days of the week, one of the days is just a step study meeting. And then another week is talking about a topic like balance or abstinence or recovery. And so I think one can do it that way too.
Which brings up a good point too, that if you go to the website, the Eating Disorders Anonymous website, this is there
Digital,
in digital form. So it's an easy, quick reference thing that you can kind of, you know, go through and at least see what the steps are and get a feel for it, and then dive deeper whenever you can.
Yeah, and one of the pieces of homework with step 1, which I'll share with you, is so first thing is this eating disorder history log, to kind of write down the history of it. And then the other one is to write down examples of how powerless we are over the eating disorder.
That's a good name.
That was a good word. That was a Freudian. So how powerless we are over the eating disorder, including any unsuccessful attempts to control or moderate thoughts and behaviors. And for step 1, the authors remind us to keep in mind that we're each responsible for our own recovery and for developing our own ideas about balance. So it's not something that, like you said earlier, it's not going to happen out there, it's going to happen within us.
So is that part of the history log too, like the unsuccessful
Yes.
attempts?
Yes.
Making note of like, this is what was happening and here's what I tried to do to fix
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so they could be done, that's interesting, they could be done simultaneously, you know, and or separately, but yeah, so here's my log sort of chronologically in a timeline manner, and then here are all the examples of how I tried to do this diet or I tried to do this program and how it didn't work, to kind of keep a reference of that. And I think you know, just writing it down and focusing on what did work, what didn't work, and just the whole picture of it leads to some patterns. And so it's almost like writing it down in black and white and then kind of looking in between the lines. And again, I mean, with every writing, with every experience, with every thought, there seems to be a continual admission about how powerless we are to it, and how powerful it is.
Right. Right. Giving it that was a big part of this for me too, was giving it that power, like acknowledging that it wasn't that I was weak or didn't have enough self-control or whatever it might be, that it was, this is a big deal and you need to treat it like a big deal. You need to give it that respect to do the work, and to ask for help. You know, it's not just, you know, I think a lot of times we minimize it because it seems scary to acknowledge, you know, that this could be a lifelong thing, that this is going to take a lot of work.
And that recovery is possible, but it has to be done through this fundamental change and really just really staying attached to the 12 steps.
Yeah, that
Awesome.
sounds good. So do you want to repeat the first step one more
Yep,
time?
so the first step is we admitted we were powerless over our eating disorders, that our lives had become unmanageable, or to put it in a different way, I admitted I was powerless over my eating disorder and that my life had become unmanageable.
Yeah.
Is that first step, is that admission, which to really build the foundation. And then the 2 sort of ideas of homework are the eating disorder log, and then this idea of writing down examples of how we are powerless over the eating disorder with the unsuccessful attempts to control or moderate thoughts and behavior.
Yeah, I love it.
Thanks,
And
Sherry.
quick resources, Eating Disorders Anonymous website, and if anyone wants to comment below
Absolutely.
in this, Julie, I'm sure will be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.